Hello and welcome to a special live chat. This is Mark Leslie Lefebvre from the Stark Reflections on Writing and Publishing podcast, and I have a special guest, Brian Meeks. Brian, welcome to this chat.
I'm thrilled to be here.
Now, the reason I brought Brian in here is Brian recently released a book called Mastering Amazon Descriptions, and of course I forced him to make sure he published it to Kobo because that's where I was reading it when I was on vacation a couple weeks ago, and beautifully matches both the sort of the title pattern as well as one of his other recent very popular books, which is Mastering Amazon Ads, and we're going to talk about both mastering Amazon descriptions or product descriptions and ads. But Brian, I have to ask you this hard-hitting question first.
Okay.
So mastering Amazon ads came out first, and I love alliteration, so that's good.
There you go.
But then mastering Amazon descriptions, it's not really about Amazon because descriptions are on every website. Now, was that you just doing like a parallel author branding sort of thing?
That's exactly it. The book is really the art of copywriting for authors, but again, thinking about branding because in the indie author community, I'm known as the Mastering Amazon Ads guy. And
yes.
So you made the point that the book is available on Kobo. People can certainly go out there and grab it there as well, because the concept is to learn to write effective copy for your description, for your newsletter, for just putting up a post on Facebook.
And I love the fact that it is very universal in the way that you want to engage with an audience. So I want to go with the very first line in the book, because the very first line is you say, my goal is to make you, the reader of the book, enjoy copywriting. Now, writers love writing, but they don't necessarily enjoy copywriting. What's the difference?
Most, and I think it's a generalization, but I think it's true because I've heard it over and over again. Most authors loathe the moment they need to write the description to publish their book. It's easily the least favorite part about this business. Right. I once put off launching a fiction title for 60 days because I hadn't written the description.
You could have written 2 books in that time, probably.
I think I wrote 1 book during that time. Everything was filled out. The ISBN number was registered, all the details, the 7 keywords picked. There was 1 box that wasn't done. I had the pricing, the book was uploaded, edited, cover art, completely done. And that was the last thing I had to do. And I thought to myself, I'll do it in the morning. And I did that every day for 60 days. And that's not me rounding. It wasn't 59 days, 60 days. And then finally I wrote a terrible, 300-word synopsis of the book, hit publish. And the moment I hit it, my first reaction was, oh, what a relief. And my second reaction was, you've got to be kidding me. Wow. I put off launching it for 2 months because my hate of doing copywriting. But it wasn't really that I hated copywriting. It was that I didn't understand it. And I think a lot of people will procrastinate when it comes to areas where they don't have any expertise, where there's no comfort level. And right. So at that moment, I emailed our friend Sean Platt. Sean Platt, he's on the Self-Publishing podcast. Prior to being an author, he was a world-class copywriter. And so I emailed him and I said, hey, Sean, and I told him the story about the 60 days. Where do I begin? Can you recommend a book for me? And he recommended Sugarman's book, Adweek, which is all about the art of copywriting, mostly on print media from the 60s and 70s. But that's where I got my start. And it absolutely changed my publishing life, because a description done correctly will convert at about 1 in 10, meaning it takes 10 people to get a new reader. And that can be a new reader buying the book, or if a person is a Kindle Unlimited subscriber, downloading it and reading it free through Kindle Unlimited. that new reader takes 10 clicks. And if you're paying for the clicks, that's better than typical descriptions, which take 30 clicks to get a conversion. And so I saw an immediate impact on my sales because I was using pay-per-click advertising. And that, that really made me profitable and let me go from a part-time author to a full-time author.
Okay, so let's take this back a little bit because they're talking about copywriting, which can kind of be a scary term as well, even for a writer.
Sure, absolutely.
What's the common issue or error that authors usually make when they're putting together their descriptions? The thing that you see most often that is actually driving the customer away from wanting to keep reading and hit that buy button?
I think the most common problem is that for an author, especially newer authors, they've just put their heart and soul into this book and they birthed it. It's their child. And they want to talk about all of the great things in the book. And I see too many descriptions that are a list of plot points, a list of characters, motivations. And you get to the end, well, you don't get to the end. There's too much. It's a massive amount of information. And it's not interesting. It doesn't draw in a potential reader and make them have to read the book. It just says this is what you get. And you get to the end as a potential reader and kind of think, well, okay, that's what happens in the book. I don't need to read it now. And so doing a complete, thorough synopsis can really ruin the experience for a person. You want to, I always say, you want to hint at what might happen and not tell the reader what will happen. That's the mistake I see most often.
Okay. And is there a list of questions or things for a writer to consider when they sit back and they try to look at their synopsis or their description or their sales copy with a fresh pair of eyes? Is there a list of questions that you ask or a way that you can approach it to try to dig right into that and see if it's doing one or the other?
Well, because I write a lot of descriptions, the question that I first ask is, what have previous readers thought were the salient points about the book? Because that's if a person leaves a review and they talk about a certain aspect that they really liked, and I tend to, obviously, you're trying to sell the book, so I look at the 5-star reviews, the 4-star reviews.
Right.
And in there will be hints and clues as to what made the book special to that reader. In those hints and clues, then I try to draw out hooks. If it says something like, "Oh, I really liked the scene with the Easter egg hunt," I don't know why I picked that, but the point is that it is. The point is, I will then try to play on that. And so the clues that I look for to begin with, because when I'm writing the description for an author, I haven't read the book. And so all I have are their existing description, and then I look at the good reviews to get more insights. And I would tell anybody listening that the hardest description to write is your own for a book that you've written where you have all of the information. It's easier for me to write it for your book because I don't have any of the information. I'm just looking for those hooks that I believe will draw a person in, which leads me to you should practice by helping other authors when they ask for help on social media to write their descriptions, because it's that practice that will make you better at it and make it easier for you to do your own.
So would you recommend maybe an author even like looking at a friend's book and doing it now without insulting them in terms of saying, hey, I loved your book. I thought it was great. I think the description should include these elements because it really, well, especially if you've read it, that's what really resonated with me. Now, I want to go back to the reviews for a second. So if the book is forthcoming and it's a pre-order and you don't have reviews, is this where you look at comments from your advanced readers, or
Sure.
yeah?
Absolutely. Advanced reader teams, even, one of my descriptions doesn't actually talk about what's in the book. You can craft an interesting description without even going into the book. But remember, the hardest thing to get maybe into an author's mind as far as this concept of writing a winning description is that you've got just one goal, and that's to get them to read your book. And
Right.
my driving sort of underlying philosophy when I'm going into writing a description is that the reader who is on Kobo looking at the description, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, wherever they're seeing this description, ironically has, like me and everyone else, probably had their attention span fractured by social media. And it's that we live in the age of likes and thumbs ups and zipping through Instagram and hitting the little love. And we do it so quickly that we can't be bothered to spend 5-10 seconds getting interested in something. We need to get hooked right away.
Okay.
And so that's an important component when you're getting started on your description. If you don't already have you don't already have reviews because the book's not up, you want to think, what's the log line? If you were in the elevator and George Lucas was there and he said, "Hey, how you doing?" And he said, "Oh, I'm great. How are you?" He goes, "Oh, boy, I just wish I could find a movie to make." And you write a science fiction series and you see that it's 3 floors until we get to the number that he's getting off at. What do you tell him in that like 2.5 seconds? And that's probably your opening hook.
Okay, cool. Now you talk about social media, and previously you mentioned doing this for Facebook or Facebook posts and stuff like that.
Sure.
Do you recommend that authors practice on Facebook and Instagram or whatever? I mean, it's that couple lines before you get to the fold, right? So you want them to
Yes.
click the read more button. So what are the compelling things that you've learned by practicing this way?
Well, this is how I became good at copywriting. Is once I decided I really wanted to improve, and I understood the concepts that Sugarman was talking about and developed some of my own. The important one being that I believe, because of this short attention span, the first line of every description, and you'll see this in my book, they're all 4 to 6 words.
Okay.
And that's a visual component of the copywriting, in that I believe formatting is as important as the words. You can have beautiful copy, but if you don't have any blank lines in there to sort of break things up, and it looks like a giant block of text, when a person clicks on your ad and they go to it and then they open it up and you see a giant thing of text, they may not even start reading. So I am always thinking about that opening line, the hook, and Sugarman talks about the first line of any ad copy has one goal, and that is to get the reader to commit to reading the second line.
Okay.
And when you think in that terms, that's a very small target, a small finish line. It's just right there. Can you get them from line 1 to line 2? If that's your only goal in writing the opening line, then it really helps you focus in on what's important. And so that's where I begin with the description, is that opening hook. Can I make it short enough that when a person gets to your page above the fold, like you mentioned, I want it short because it should be able to be read almost as if it were one word. On my description for Henry Wood Detective Agency, the opening line is, "Henry knew one thing, ... That's it.
Okay.
Nobody's going to get to the ellipses and stop reading. They have to go to the next line because it's just our brains are too curious not to know what comes after the ... So the next line is, "Dames were trouble." or well, the line is, Henry knew one thing, dames were trouble.
Right.
Okay, well, that's only 7 words I've used thus far. There's a blank line between them, and there's a lot of information in there. It's a hook. You kind of want to know, why are dames trouble? There's an indicator that this is not a present day story, and it's not. It takes place in 1955 because nobody uses the word dames anymore. So I picked that word to give a clue as to the period of the piece. And the cover is Art Deco, which Art Deco's the 20s and 30s, but it still gives, shades of older storytelling. And then and at that point, you just want them to get on to line 3. And I don't really get into the meat of the description until line 4, which has then a little bit of a paragraph. And so that's how I approach description writing, is getting them drawn in so you can get them to the meat of your description. And then throughout the rest of the description, I have other smaller hooks to keep them moving along. And the idea is to get them all the way to the end where there's a call to action, something like get it now, and then they will become a reader. Well 10% of the time. I mean, even great copywriting fails 90% of the time. But the difference between failing 90% of the time, a 1 in 10 description, meaning 1 conversion out of 10,
right,
and failing 96.7% of the time, 1 in 30, is huge, because you don't need to be a math genius to know that, hey, Mark, would you rather pay for 30 clicks to get a new reader or 10?
right. Okay. Now, you talked about that call to action. So you've got the hook, you've got the compelling space in the visual representation to draw them into the meat of what the book is about. And then you've got, I noticed in the book, you do a couple things. You talk about the audience, specifically if you like, that sort of thing. And then there's usually a definitive call to action, like buy it now or read. Yeah.
And that goes back to, that's just from me. I talked about being, putting off writing the description for 60 days. Well, I went from hating that part of the book business to I adore copywriting now. I love copywriting. Right. And so I go to places like Copy Blogger, and I read about copywriting, and I watch everywhere, billboards, TV. I'm listening to commercials at the bottom of articles on news sites. There's the clickbait. Well, those clickbait headlines are great copywriting. You won't believe what actress so-and-so looks like today. Oh,
right.
I know what they're trying to do.
Yes, exactly.
But I got to click on it. And so because I'm out there always looking at that, one of the things that I've grown to understand is that calls to action are, it's part of the package. We as consumers expect to be asked to buy the product. This has been beaten into our brains since, before you or I were born. It likely started on Madison Avenue in the 50s, for those that have seen Mad Men. It's been proven. It works. Now, it is so ingrained in our mindset that we expect to be asked to buy that if it's not there, it feels like something's missing. And so, I don't know that people really read the get it now and process that. It's like if you drew a face without a nose. You kind of want it there. You expect it to be there. There are artists that can do faces without noses and make it work, but you kind of want the nose there. And so I always want it to be short, get it now, buy it now, because it goes back to that opening hook. I want it to be that little signpost that says, okay, it's time to buy, but I want it to be short enough that it registers without them having to think through it.
Yeah, kind of like using said instead
Yes,
of he pontificated or something like that, right? It's
that's a great
short, it's
example.
almost invisible. Yeah.
Yes, that's
Okay.
what we're going for.
So in the book, one of the things that you do that's really effective, or was really, really useful for me, is there's dozens and dozens of examples, but you don't just give examples. What you do is you show the initial description. You talk about what was good about the description. You talk about what you think could be improved, and then you do the rewrite. But in some cases, evidence that we're always improving, sometimes you have multiple rewrites and you talk
Yeah,
about, well, why this first rewrite, here's what's working, here's what didn't work so well. So we tried again.
yeah.
And what I love is you can compare and contrast. It was a really, really effective. I mean, you must have had to get everyone's permission to do that throughout the
Oh,
book.
yeah. And most of these descriptions I wrote where I would write the description, I would send it to the author. We would then have a conversation about it. Maybe we'd do it on Skype or,
Right.
something like Be Live, like we're on now. And then they would try it. In
Okay.
the book, most of the descriptions that we hammered out, well, they saw really nice improvement right out of the gate. One in particular, I helped this gentleman with his description, and he had pretty good data, and I think his conversion rate was about 1 in 30, and then after I don't know, 3 to 4 weeks of the new description, it improved to 1 in 27, which is okay. It's moving in the right direction, but that's not what I expect. I expect a much greater improvement. And so we got back on Skype. We had a conversation, and I asked him, I said, okay, how important to the whole story is the idea of organ harvesting? Because when I wrote that part in the description, your old description was really focused on organ harvesting. I used that because that's all I knew, and it kind of grossed me out. I don't even like reading my description. I found it uncomfortable. And he said, well, it's only about 20% of the book. And I said, can we write a description that doesn't use the term organ harvesting? And we did. And things got better. And so now, it just doesn't always work the first time. And
Right.
that's one of the downsides of when I am helping write a description. Sometimes it was something about, there was a zoo, science fiction, but the zoo was all humans in the zoo. And that just didn't appeal to me. And so we rewrote it. And I honestly don't remember if this one's in the book or not, but we rewrote
I
it.
think it was.
He tested it. It just didn't work. And so we went back to tweaking the concept on humans as a part of a zoo, because apparently with his readership, that resonated. And I wasn't his target demographic, which
Right.
you always have to understand. And so, well, it's great practice to help another author. There's a lot of different genres out there. And can I tell the story of the copywriting miracle?
Yes, please do.
Well, the book had been out a few days, and I have a Facebook group, Mastering Amazon Descriptions. A woman posts in the group, and I saw her post. I mean, it went up, and I just happened to be looking at the group when she posted, and it said something to the effect of, I've started the book, ... I couldn't put it down. It was going along great. I was enjoying myself. And then I got to chapter 43 and I couldn't read any further. There wasn't a link. And so I went and I had to look up, which book chapter 43 was about, because I hadn't considered putting in links to these 40 descriptions I had written, because my customer base, wasn't there to shop for a new read. You were there to learn about copywriting. Well, she wanted a link to one of the books. So I looked it up and I went to Amazon. I got her a link and I posted it in the comments because I like to be helpful. She wrote back a couple minutes later, thank you. I bought the book and I want to put this into perspective. In my entire life, I have never owned a cookbook. I've never wanted a cookbook. And I read the description you wrote about this cookbook, and I had to own it. And so I succeeded in selling a copy of the cookbook to a person who did not want to buy a cookbook, was not in the market for a cookbook, yet the copywriting compelled her to buy the cookbook. It is my favorite copywriting story. It's a copywriting miracle because that's the power of copywriting. And
Yeah.
if you improve your descriptions, your readers improve their descriptions, you're dealing with a much warmer audience. You're dealing with people that want to find a new science fiction book or looking for their latest romantic thriller. You've already got them part way. You just need to make your book exciting enough that they're willing to, because it's not about the money. That's important to understand. Throughout the book, I give articles where I use proper copywriting to make a point that's helpful to authors. I want to show how copywriting can be used in long form. But I also talk about pricing because people don't care that much whether you spend $2.99 or $4.99. They just want to buy a book. What you're trying to convince them of is this book that I'm reading the description, is it worth me spending my time? Because that's the more valuable commodity that they need to commit to. The hours and hours they're going to spend wandering through your fantasy world is a much more expensive, more valuable, more precious commodity than the $4.99 price for the book. So keep that in mind, and that's what you're trying to hook them into.
Now let's go, because you talked about price and you talked about the amazing statistics that you track, like the 1 in 10 and 1 in 30. Yeah. I think it's a perfect segue as we can migrate into ads, because you do in your Mastering Amazon Ads, now known as, it used to be AMS Ads, now it's Amazon Advertising. You talk about bids. Is one of the elements, because there's so many moving parts in an ad. But one of the things I remember is you talked about you don't necessarily always have to bid really, really high, particularly because you do the math all the time, and spending, let's say, 75 cents on a click, maybe 1 in 10 or 1 in 30, and you're paying for the clicks and you're getting a sale. If you're getting 30 clicks and you're paying 75 cents per click, but the book is 99 cents, you're making 35 cents on the one sale. So you're going to be in the hole.
$22.50.
And that's not good, because when you spend more than you make, that's a negative number. I'm not good at math, but I understand that much at least.
That's true. Which then the author, because there are some authors who can spend $22.50 to get a new reader on a book where they only make 35 cents. And this is important to understand, because if that author is a romance author who has 15 books in a series and 3 series of that length, and people who read book 1 of any of her series tend to become rabid fans and will read 40 of her books, and most of the books are priced at $4.99, she could be spending $22.50 to get a reader who will, over their lifetime, spend $40, $50, $70. In which case,
so that's worthwhile.
So it's worthwhile. But as I talk about in the book, it's very easy for authors to get in the habit of assuming that their bid is the correct bid for now and in the future. And that's not the case, because throughout the year it changes. You may have a month where it's really expensive and you start bidding higher, 50 cents a click, and maybe because you often don't pay what you bid, especially on keyword ads. Maybe you bid 50 cents and you pay 30 cents. Well, I've seen many authors who never then test with their new ads, what if I bid 48 cents? And that should be a question that you're always asking. Okay, this ad went for a week and a half. It did really well, got me 300,000 impressions, a lot of clicks, and it started to die off. So why don't I replace it and see if I can get a similar number of impressions and clicks with 2 cents less bid? And if for whatever reason the market has softened and it's summer, or people aren't focused as much on their ads, maybe you don't need to bid as much. And there was a woman back when Mastering Amazon Ads came out who I spent a couple hours on the phone with, and she had a very large catalog, rabid fan base, was doing maybe 30,000 a month in sales on 10, 12, 15,000, I don't remember the exact number, in ad sales or in paid clicks. So she was spending a lot of money, but her leftover at the end of the day was $15,000, $16,000, $18,000. That's a pretty good month. And after we talked and she started testing lower bids, and she didn't go drastically from what she was bidding and cut it in half or anything. She just eased her way down. And a month later, she was spending the same amount per month, but paying 20 cents less per click. So the volume of clicks that she was getting for the amount she was spending was vastly greater. And of course, more clicks means more sales. And so she was making more revenue on the same amount of spend. And for 8-9 months prior to our discussion, had just gotten in that mindset. Okay, this is what I have to bid. This is what it's going to be forever. And she didn't check it. A woman last week I had a discussion with, and her assumption was always, if an ad was working, bid more. And she wasn't getting any benefit from bidding more. Right. It's in our mindset that more is always better, and that can be really hard on your bottom line. Whereas I'm always looking for and asking the question, what if I tried this, because I want to drive it the other way. I want to pay less per click. And I mean, I've had over 600,000 clicks. So it matters. A few pennies here and there can add up to a lot of money.
Of course. So I get the impression in talking to a lot of authors that they may have tried Amazon ads and they went in and they threw $50 at it. And then at the end of the period, they spent $50 and didn't get a lot out of it. It could have been ad copy. It could have been other factors. But if somebody's had an issue where they haven't done well on Amazon ads, where do you recommend to get back to the drawing board, to step up to the plate again? What are 2 or 3 things that you recommend they should take a serious look at in order to give it a good old college try?
Well, in Mastering Amazon Ads, I have a chapter talking about the copywriting. And I really think if a person hasn't gone through and changed their description to get the best conversion rate, then whatever they do on Amazon ads is going to be less effective than it should be. And that's because they're not getting the best conversion rate. So that would be the first step. And the reason I wrote Mastering Amazon Descriptions is because it's part of the process for having success in advertising. And it's not just Amazon ads. If you're advertising through Facebook, Mark Dawson is the master of Facebook ads. And if you have learned how to advertise on Facebook profitably, but you've never optimized your description with correct copywriting, that is an inexpensive way to immediately improve your bottom line. Okay. And so I would look at that. If you did fail at attempting ads on a platform, well, fix your description and then go back and try it again. But people, they quit too quickly and they don't gather enough data. That's the biggest. Okay. The biggest problem is it can take 1,000 clicks before you have a really good feel for how your description is converting because of a thing called variance. Variance is simply, if you flip a coin, 50% of the time it'll come up heads, 50% will come up tails if you flip it enough times.
Right.
But if you flip it only 3 times and it comes up heads 3 times in a row, nobody is going to say that, oh, well, it will always come up heads, because we instinctively know that tails will come up some of the time. It just didn't happen that time. And it's the same with clicks.
Okay.
If you have a description that converts at 1 in 30 or 1 in 10, either one of those descriptions, a 1 in 10 description can go 0 for 30 clicks without a conversion, which leads me to the other biggest mistake people make in this day and age. And we talked about this. The copywriting is good on any platform, but if you're on Amazon and you happen to be exclusive, right now 70% of readers are consuming their books through Kindle Unlimited. Because of that, that means if you're one of those authors who's exclusive, and every 100 new readers you get, 70% of them, you're getting them through Kindle Unlimited, and you're making your money through the page reads, and all you're looking at are your sales numbers, and you've got, okay, I've had 30 clicks and 0 sales. That's not that's not what's pertinent. What's pertinent is how many new readers did you get? Did you see a spike in page reads? Did you see your ranking improve because of the benefit you get from a download?
Right,
So,
and those aren't shown in the Amazon dashboard. No. You have to do that additional research yourself.
You have to do that research yourself. And so making the mistake of saying, oh, well, I've had this handful of clicks. It could be you've got a great description that converts at 1 in 10, and you've had a bad run of luck. You went, all those flips in a row without getting a conversion. But it could also be you had conversions, and you're just not looking at all the data. I hope people understand. Do we have any questions from people?
There is actually a question that Julie just posted, and I wanted to add, because it's kind of tied to that, because you just talked about Kindle Unlimited reads, and if you're exclusive to Amazon, there's a different measure that doesn't come into play. Now, Julie asks, Brian, do you feel that AMS ads are equally valuable for authors who are wide listed, or should we stick to BookBub and Facebook ads for better overall return?
Well, it's just harder for somebody that's wide because, again, 65 to 70% of people converting on Amazon are converting because they subscribe to Kindle Unlimited. It's the Netflix of books. And so if you're using AMS ads and you're getting these clicks, well, the person doesn't know until they've clicked on it whether your book is part of Kindle Unlimited.
I see. Okay.
And so if it's just much harder to be profitable when 7 out of 10 people they click and the first thing their eyes are going to go to is off to the right and say, okay, well, I'm looking for a Kindle Unlimited read, and this book is not part of Kindle Unlimited. They may not read your first line. So it's going to be hard, but that's that way with any platform. I mean, and I'm not saying that you should have one, that you should be exclusive. This is not an advertisement for Amazon. I have a friend who does very well every single month. I mean, big numbers, but last I knew, 55% of his revenue came from Apple iBooks. So not only was he wide, but one venue, his most successful venue, was not Amazon. So it depends on the math of your situation with your book, where you should be. But regardless, it's going to be a greater challenge because of that component with so many readers and the most voracious readers.
Okay. Now, can I go back to something that you made me think of before? Julian, thank you. That was a great question. When you were talking about the ads and variants, you made me think maybe it's important to do A/B testing, because maybe I have variables, I have these keywords, I have this, but maybe my text, my copy, I have 2 ideas for copy, and one is a copy that plays on the humor of a humorous thriller, for example, and the other one plays on the intrigue and mystery, and I want to measure it. Is that something you recommend, where you actually have multiple ads running in parallel, where you only change one thing?
It's a little bit, I recommend that. The thing about ad copy, and that's copywriting too, is it's important to try to do your best job with the advertising copy, but not spend more than 90 seconds at it. And here's the reason why.
90 seconds?
90 seconds, yeah. If you've spent more than 90 seconds, if you're getting on Facebook trying to get help from people with your advertising copy, you don't really understand how people are shopping. The ad copy that you're writing isn't selling your book in most cases, 99.99% of the time. The ad copy you're writing is selling the idea of clicking. Once you've clicked, it's your description's job to sell it, because when they get to the end of your description, they won't remember the advertising copy. That is no longer, that's been wiped out. Whatever you wrote, you'll love. If you love Brian, you'll adore Mark's book. Okay, that got them to click because they love Brian and they want to read Mark's book. But they're not buying it based on that copy. That isn't converting the sale. It's converting the click. Or maybe it's just a really good cover and people aren't even reading your copy. So in all of the ads I've ever written, and I've written many, many thousands of ads for myself, for other authors, I've had one where the ad copy mattered. And that was for my satire, Underwood Scotch and Rye. And the rye is W-R-Y, like rye humor.
Right.
And the copy was more snark than a snarkopotamus in Snarktown on a snarking spree. And this was the last ad I was writing on a day where I'd written about 20 in a span. And it was just, I was tired and I wrote it because it made me laugh. And I hit publish on it. That ad crushed it. It had 900% ROI for 5-6 weeks, and it wasn't the same ad. I kept using that copy because the ad would go for 8 or 10 days. It would die. I would write a new ad, use the same copy, and just kept using it, and it was incredible. But the thing that was amazing, and the reason I knew that copy was impacting sales, is not only were the sales great and the KU downloads, but during that time, 24 of 25 new reviews were 5 stars. Now, this is a 4.3 or 4.4 book. So, getting 4.9 over 25 reviews, it told me that I had dialed in the exact right bit of humor to get a reader who would appreciate the book. So that's why that's important. But I've written thousands and thousands of ads, and it's happened once. I'm always trying to find that magic bullet again. But the realities are just, come up with a decent ad, do your best, and don't worry about, it's not the end of the world if you have a bad ad, because you're going to write hundreds of them and get them to the page. What is a big deal is if you have a terrible description, because that's where the rubber meets the road.
Right. Right. Well, thank you. I want to put out a call. Thanks, Julie, for asking that question. If you or any other of the people who are watching this live right now have any questions, feel free to post them. I'll pop them up. I've figured out how to do that on the screen. I'll pop them up, and I will also read them for podcast listeners. So because they're not going to have the visual to play with. But while we're waiting for other questions, it sort of leads to the next question that sort of comes up is, well, where do I start with an AMS ad? Do I put in $5 a day? Do I put in $5 for a period? Do I put in 500? Like, how does this work? What's a good place to start for someone?
I think this is another area where people often make a mistake. I believe the best way to learn AMS or any advertising is to start really small. Pick a number that if you happen to have, because of variance, a bad run with your first $5 and it doesn't work out well, that you're not going to quit, because any advertising requires analyzing your data. It requires patience, which that's the commodity people don't want to spend on their ads, and learning. In Mastering Amazon Ads, chapter 5 is, I think, the longest chapter in the book, and it's simply about setting expectations and understanding how much work it takes to get good at Amazon ads. And right now, in part because of the book, because I wrote the book, it's more competitive. It's more of a challenge. It's constantly testing. I actually use all of my fiction books for research. So I am constantly turning off all my ads and then trying a new concept. So because I'm less interested at this point in, oh, I need to sell some of the Henry Wood Detective series because I want the revenue, than I am in trying to figure out new ways to succeed with Amazon ads and doing research along those lines. I'm constantly trying different strategies, different methodologies. And so, and I had a conversation with a gentleman a couple days ago, and we came up with a clever idea, which I'm probably later today going to write 8 or 10 ads, because I write across a bunch of genres, so I can do the test multiple times and see how it works. And that's what I'll do. And for 5 or 6 weeks, I'll be testing that, and it will either work or it won't. And 90% of the time, things that I try out don't have any measurable impact or aren't an improvement over the way it's already done.
Okay.
But an author that's starting out new, you might have a clever idea. And so you want to test, and you want to give it time to really give you the data and feedback to understand, did it really work? Because in 30 clicks, you're not going to know. In 1,000 clicks, you'll know, but you want to start out small, bid low, and then ease your way up. And don't use the bid plus. Bid plus is terrible. I have to go on a rant for just a moment. Bid plus is simply, for those who haven't done AMS ads, Amazon gives you the option, if your ad isn't, and I'm using air quotes, working, to click bid plus, and they will increase your bid by 50%. Well, that's not how you want to increase your bid. If your ad isn't working and you start at 15, 20, 25 cents, wherever you think a good low entry point is, and it doesn't work, then you kill the ad after a week and you try 27 cents, and then you try 30 cents, and then 32.
Okay, so small increments then.
Small increments, because if you go from bidding 30 cents to having Amazon jump to 45 cents, and all you needed to do was go to 32 cents, 13 extra cents per click, that's a lot of money. That's $1.30 over 10 clicks, and that's if your description's optimized. And that can be the difference between profit and loss. So don't use that button. It doesn't mean more work. Absolutely. It'll take you longer to get good at Amazon ads. But the goal isn't to get good at it quickly. The goal is to become talented at pay-per-click advertising so you can use it to run your business, for now and in the future.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And you said something there that sort of led to another question that's very, very common. You talked about patience. You talked about learning. What is a long enough period? Is it a week, like you said, like you just 7 full days so you can actually have enough to measure to see if it's working, or what's optimal?
I let ads, I'll watch them, particularly because I'm usually doing research. I'll give them 7 to 10 days. And if they haven't turned on, I terminate them and I write a new set. If they have turned on, well, then I'm looking at how many impressions are they getting per day. And at the end of 10 days, how are they still getting a similar amount? If on day 3 it turned on and it got 20,000 impressions, then it got 38,000, then 52, then 50, then 49, then 57, then 43, and then 2,000, well, now that may be an indicator that the ad is near being done. And so I will look at the next day and it's got 1,800. Well, I'm probably going to kill the ad and write a new one because it's sort of run its cycle. And that's an indicator to me that I didn't overbid, because, you can bid really high and get an ad to stay on for a long time, but that doesn't, just because it's on for a long time, that's not the goal. The goal is an optimized bid where you're as profitable as possible. And so if your ad is getting these large quantities of impressions for a really long time, it might be because you've overbid. And that's a question you should be asking. It might just be a great ad. I mean, again, one never knows for sure. But if one is running suspiciously long, then that's something I'm going to look at. Could I get the same sort of results with a lower bid? Because ultimately, in the long run, that's what's important. I'm not interested in trying to write one ad that's going to run for a year. I'm interested in writing ads that will be profitable, and with a little extra effort, more ads and so forth, I will make the most money possible, because that's what I did. I mean, that's how I started out. By the time I launched Mastering Amazon Ads, I had spent $45,000 on ads and generated $200,000 in revenue. And so it was because of that mindset of constantly testing that let me be profitable.
Okay. I'm just putting out another call. We're going to be wrapping up in a few minutes. So if there are any pertinent questions, feel free to post them here. But that sort of leads to the other thing. When you say I spent $45,000 in ads, I almost had a coronary.
Well, I mean, that wasn't in a week. That was over 18 months.
One ad for today, I'm going to put in $45,000. Yeah. It is actually hard to spend a lot of money on Amazon. Like Facebook seems to be willing to take your money hand over fist. With Amazon, it's a little bit harder sometimes to even get them.
It can absolutely be hard. And again, you have to try creative things. And so I will tell people that the environment today is more of a challenge than when I was doing it before I wrote the book. At the point that I started, you had to be exclusive to Amazon to run ads, which eliminated all of the wide people. Right. And that's not the case anymore. Anybody can run ads. So it is more competitive. There's a lot more people playing the game, but you can still get there, and you can get there. There's one woman who writes middle grade fiction. I believe that's got to be the hardest genre to do ads well in, because it's such a hard thing. You have to have a description that is kind of catered to both an adult and a child, because you don't know who's doing the shopping.
Right.
And your ad copy, same sort of thing. You're aiming kind of at two different targets, and you've only got one shot. So, But she's doing it. She actually took me to lunch about a month ago here in Las Vegas. She was in town. And I encourage any writers out there who want to buy me lunch to do it. And she worked really hard. It took her 6 months or so to get her ads dialed in and find out what worked for her for those books. But she had, just as I was going to lunch, had $50,000 in profit for her previous 6 months. And so she was on pace to a six-figure year. But she didn't come out of the gate. It took her 6 months to really get it dialed in, and she was patient.
And so it was 6 months of experimenting and measuring and doing analytics, and then killing an ad and starting a new one.
And changing her description and really figuring out what worked there. But once she got it, things started to roll.
Okay, great. Well, Brian, thank you so much for this incredible wealth of information that you shared. Where can people find out more about you, and of course about the Mastering Amazon Descriptions and Mastering Amazon Ads books?
The books, as we mentioned, ironically, are my only wide books. So you can find both Amazon Descriptions and Amazon Ads on Kobo, obviously on Amazon. And I have a couple groups on Facebook, which I try to be active in the groups. One, they're by the same names as the book, Mastering Amazon Ads and Author's Guide.
So you made it really hard then.
Yeah, I made it a challenge. And that's where they can find me and post questions in the groups. They're pretty active as far as the number of people in the groups that are willing to help. And that's a great place for practicing your copywriting.
Okay. Well, thanks, Brian. And Tanya posts, thank you. She also posted a comment earlier that I want to share that I thought was kind of funny. And when you were talking about bumping into George Lucas in the elevator, she said, I'm Canadian. I'd say I really like your movie, and then go quiet. And you know what, Talina, of course, yes, I would do the exact same thing because I'm Canadian as well. I would just slink off into the back corner. Brian.
I'd try to get a movie deal. I mean, if I was in the elevator with George Lucas,
Of course you would.
I'd be trying to get a movie deal.
Of course you would. Well, Brian, thank you. Thank you, Talina. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, other viewers, for watching. This will be available post live. It'll also show up in the Stark Reflections podcast feed. I hope everyone has a fantastic afternoon. And thanks, Brian. We'll chat with you soon.
Can I mention one thing before we sign off?
You're not going to go into the Fitbit land, are you?
I'm going into Fitbit right now.
Oh, no.
41,203 steps week to date. Mark is at 35,525.
Yeah, and I was 10,000 steps ahead of you when I went to bed last night, and then I woke up and you were 8,000 steps ahead of me. So, I mean, that was just
a long walk last night.
Oh my God. You took, and it was like, okay, I figured I'm going to go and I'm going to make sure that when we finish this chat, I'm going to head to the gym and maybe do an 8 or 9 kilometer run just to see if I can get caught up to you again.
Oh, 8 or 9 kilometers. That's like 22,000 steps. So that would put you in the lead, but then you'll go to
temporarily.
Bed.
Then I go to bed. Exactly. Damn you, Brian Meeks.
It's been a fun show. Thanks, Mark.
All right. Thanks. Take care.